In his address last night, President Biden emphasized the role the government can and must play in a variety of areas in American lives. He touted his work so far in passing the American Rescue Plan, and he promised to keep going by instituting affordable child care and police reform. So joining me now is the president of the National Urban League, Marc Morial, for more on how this presidential administration can assist historically underserved communities. Marc, thanks for being here. It's a big issue.
And thank you for having me.
Very pressing issue in our country now and for a long time, and it feels like this administration wants to get after it, maybe. What has the Biden administration accomplished in its first 100 days that helps these goals and these traditionally underserved groups, and where are they falling short?
So I think what's been accomplished thus far is the appointment of a leadership team at the Department of Justice, beginning with Merrick Garland and Lisa Monaco and Vanita Gupta and the soon-to-be-confirmed Kristen Clark, that will restore the integrity of the Justice Department and the role of the Justice Department as the chief enforcer of civil and constitutional rights. Secondly, the Attorney General's willingness to, if you will, cancel former Attorney General Sessions' refusal to enforce the civil rights laws when it comes to the investigation of systemic unconstitutional policing and to restore the power of the Justice Department to do those investigations is an important step. So in 100 days, the president has put a marker down that reverses the course of the last 4 years and reestablishes the role of the Justice Department as an enforcer of our nation's civil rights laws. Now, the George Floyd Justice and Policing Bill, which we strongly support, which we played a role in drafting, would be an additional federal tool. But Terry, I want to emphasize that a federal tool is needed. And that tool, the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, would strengthen the hand of the Justice Department in many, many ways to rebuild and restore trust, ensure accountability, but that a federal law alone is not enough. There's a role for law enforcement to play. There's a role for mayors and city council members and county councils. There's a role for governors and state legislators to play. There's a role for community leaders to play. If we're going to rebuild trust, hold officers who offend the law, break the law, violate people's constitutional rights, kill unarmed citizens for no reason, accountable, and if you will, change the philosophy of policing to a community-oriented, prevention-oriented, if you will, effort. And I think that we have to understand first by acknowledging that we have an issue and we have a problem. And it's not to disparage all police officers. It's to say that we have systemic challenges that we have to confront as a nation.
And Marc, there are glimmers on this issue of some bipartisanship, a rare thing here in Washington, people working across the aisle to see if they can pass some kind of police reform legislation. Today, Attorney Ben Crump and family spoke with Republicans and Democrats up there about potential reforms. What Ben Crump had to say after one of those meetings, we want to take a listen to for just a sec. Here's Ben Crump.
This was about them understanding that this is very real to all of us, but it means more to these families than anybody else, because that legislation will literally have the blood stain of their loved ones. And that was the tone and the tenor of the meeting. They listened a lot and talked about how they wanted to make sure it was meaningful.
You know, Marc, just looking at that picture of those families, that is such a tragic fellowship that we have in this country. And yet there they are in the halls of Congress with Ben Crump. They're having their say, and it does, as I say, look like some people are talking about getting something done. What do you think needs to be done in Congress to change policing?
Well, I think that what happened today with families meeting with members of Congress, more of that needs to occur. The voice of the victims, the families of those who've lost their lives to police violence, needs to be heard by every member of the United States Senate, every member of the House. This is not about politics and partisanship and posturing. This is about the victims of police violence. And whether these victims, whose family members frankly stand as martyrs, whether their experiences are not going to be the experiences of another generation of parents and grandparents and wives and sons and daughters, Terry, that kind of dialogue. So I would challenge every member of Congress to speak to victims of police violence in their communities. I know they speak to law enforcement. I'm confident they speak to law enforcement. But in this instance, that kind of dialogue, I think, will help us understand that the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act is the civil rights bill of this generation. And it would be a powerful testament if people came together so that President Biden could sign a strong substantive bill prior to the anniversary of George Floyd's death on May 25th.
And that is his goal. It was a remarkable scene, really. You talked about trust, Mark. So what impact can police reform, if it happens, at the national or local levels, have on other aspects of communities where this has been such a problem?
When there is trust, communities are safer. When there is trust, law enforcement is more effective in ferreting out those types of offenses that communities want them to ferret out. When there is trust, there's an understanding that in addition to policing, communities need summer jobs for youth. They need holistic housing. There needs to be investments in other areas. And so when there's trust, there is an opportunity to do a wider range of things. And we have to rebuild the trust, but with trust goes accountability. And this is where the system has been severely broken. Some 15,000 people in the last 15 years have been shot by the police. There have only been, with the Derek Chauvin case, 45 convictions, and over 170 of those folks are charged. So it's rare that law enforcement who shoot people and break and offend their constitutional rights are held accountable. So trust and accountability are twin pillars of what we need going forward.
And it is an issue of the moment, no question about it. National Urban League Director Marc Morial, great to see you. Thanks very much for being with us.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.